And the recording has begun.
Thank you. So I'm calling this meeting to order. It's now 7:40, the meeting for the Housing Committee. Um, we will do a roll call for the few people that are here. And as the people join in, we'll just have them say their name. But for now, who's on the line? So this way it can be on the record for the recording.
Armenia Brown.
Thank you. And say if you're a member of the committee and or not. Hello? Armenia Brown?
Yes.
Can you say for the record if you're a member of the committee or not?
Say that.
If you are a member of the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a member of the committee. Yes.
Thank you.
Member.
And next.
Carlene Gordon, Community Board 17.
Thank you. And next.
Donna Sinclair, non-member.
Thank you. Next. On the phone.
Martinez, not a member.
Thank you. Next. On the phones.
Joan Bacardine, board member, unable to get on using the credentials provided.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I had trouble too. I don't know what's going on. Next.
Chair for the, oh, sorry.
Thank you. So those are all that's here for now. And committee expectations. Yes.
Chair for the Parks and Beautification Committee.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us, Chair Antoine. Okay, I think that's the last of it. Yes, so far. Committee expectations, basically just respect each other. When people are talking on the floor, please try not to talk over them. Please don't be rude to each other or rude to our speakers that are here. And thank you very much. And that's mainly for when we have visitors who come on, basically to try to control the floor. I need you to let everyone speak and have a chance to speak. Everyone will have a turn. We're going to hold off on approval of a minutes until we get more people on here, until we get a quorum, because right now we don't have a quorum. And so
I think your phone is cutting out because there are parts, it goes silent every now and then. And we're missing some of what you're saying.
okay, I'm sorry. Maybe my internet, I'm not sure. Basically, I was saying that we were going to put off approval of a minutes until more people are on board, because right now we don't have a quorum.
Okay.
So we can move ahead to our speaker who's here doing a presentation, Mr. Jonathan Fox. He's going to be speaking to us on tennis rights. And he's coming from the New York Legal
Assistance group.
Assistant group. I always miss the A. I can't get the A. NYLAG. Mr. Fox, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Perline, and thanks to everyone for having me tonight. My name is Jonathan Fox. I'm the director of the Tenants' Rights Unit at the New York Legal Assistance Group. We are one of the dozen or so legal services providers that represent people with low incomes in eviction cases, mostly in housing court. And so the topic of what I was going to talk about today is the past, present, and future of the right to counsel for tenants in New York City Housing Court. And I don't know exactly sort of who's a renter, who's an owner, who's a landlord here. So you should just know that this most of what I'm going to say is sort of going to be from the perspective of tenants with low incomes, the people who we represent in housing court. So I'll sort of start with so basically right now New York City has a law that theoretically allows any household that's been sued in housing court in a non-payment case or a holdover case the ability to get an attorney to represent them in their case if their household income is under 200% of federal poverty. And that's pretty low. Like 200% of federal poverty, even for a family of four, is I think around less than $50,000. So that's for a family of four. For a single person, it's in the mid 20s, and it sort of goes up from there. So these are generally people who are pretty low income, and so theoretically, every person. And most of the people who are in housing court are people who are low income, because if you don't usually have a non-payment case if you have high income, right? Because you're able to pay your rent. So most of the cases, theoretically, any person who is coming into housing court should be able to get an attorney to represent them in their eviction case. The reality, and I'll talk more about this later, the reality is that right now that is not happening. And that's because of there's just major capacity constraints and a lot of other issues. I'm gonna get there. That's sort of the current. But I do want to start with the way things used to be before this law became a law. So this law went into effect in August 2017, and it rolled out with only 2 zip codes per borough where you got your right to counsel, and then in each year they added some more zip codes. The math never made sense to me because we went from like 2 to 4 to 5 or 6, and then every borough has like 80 odd zip codes. So they added a whole bunch of zip codes at the last minute. And yeah, there are some zip codes that don't have a lot of eviction cases, like Brooklyn Heights or whatever. There's not a lot of eviction cases in Brooklyn Heights, or parts of Williamsburg or whatever. But there are a lot of zip codes in Brooklyn that generate eviction cases. But before this law existed, about 99% of tenants did not have a lawyer in housing court. They were unrepresented. And almost all landlords are represented in housing court. So there's a tremendous access to justice issue, a tremendous ability, landlords have a tremendous ability to litigate cases in housing court, and tenants didn't really have anyone on their side. There were nonprofits that got small amounts of funding to do this work before 2017, but it was very, very rare that one would be able to get an attorney to represent them in their housing court case. Now, the numbers are much better. It's about, data is a little hard to come by on this, but it's probably somewhere around 20-30% of tenants are who are being sued in housing court are getting an attorney to represent them. So as the law went into effect, the legal services providers were doing a very good job of representing nearly all of the people who were in the designated zip codes that we needed to represent. So, for example, some of the first zip codes were in Brooklyn. I'm just focusing on Brooklyn, but it was Bed-Stuy 11216 and Bushwick sort of Bushwick and Bed-Stuy 11221, and then it expanded into 11225, which is sort of like Prospect Lefferts Gardens and a little bit of Flatbush, and then it went into 11226, which is Flatbush. I actually live in 11226, and there were a number of other zip codes that were 11213, which is Crown Heights was one of the early zip codes. And these zip codes were chosen because A, they had a large volume of eviction cases. B, there were a lot of entries to homeless shelters from those zip codes from people who were being evicted, and also there's a lot of rent regulated housing there, usually rent stabilized. So once the law went into full effect, and everyone and all legal services providers basically had to represent almost every person that came into housing court, because most people who come into housing court are income eligible. We literally could not take all of the cases. There were just too many cases, and a lot of the cases that we did have, this mandate to take all of the cases went into effect in 2021 or 2022, sorry. And we had a ton of cases that we took during the COVID-19 pandemic that were stayed for all sorts of different reasons. And those cases were taking a very, very long time to resolve. So all of our attorneys had over 40 cases, and some of them were not even very experienced. And we all, and this like wasn't just us, it was all the other legal services providers. And we basically got to a point where we were only able to take a relatively small percentage of the cases that were coming in at any given time. So that definitely means that in New York City right now, this law that was basically supposed to be very similar to what you would see if you were sort of facing a felony charge, right? Like if you're charged with a felony and you can't afford a lawyer, you will get a lawyer, right? It's guaranteed by the Constitution, actually. And New York basically created the same type of thing to exist in a civil case, in an eviction case. And we were the first jurisdiction to do it. There are a number of other places throughout the country that have done this now. I believe Philadelphia, San Francisco, I think Columbus, Ohio, and a few other places. I think Newark is thinking about it. Baltimore is thinking about it. There might be some more that I'm missing, but so this is a movement that's sort of catching. But the reality, the sad truth is that in New York City right now, it's not really living up to the vision that that everyone had for it. And so there are people in the city council that are talking about increasing the funding. There's a lot of advocacy on behalf of a bunch of different groups to increase the funding for this so that there really is enough funding. So right now, this program gets $110 million of the city's budget, and people there is advocacy to increase the funding to as much as $461 million. So there's definitely a very large number of people that are not getting lawyers now, and there's just a lot of volume in housing court. New York City Housing Court is the highest volume housing court in the nation by far. Like they're just on any given day in housing court, there are hundreds of cases, and that happens every single day. I mean, it's not a surprise, there are 2.5 million people in Brooklyn alone, right? So, yeah. So, I guess also just to mention some other things. So this change in the right to counsel law from basically going to a universe where almost no one had a lawyer to a universe where ideally everyone should have a lawyer, is a major shift in sort of providing access to counsel. The other thing that has changed is the substantive law itself, the actual laws that govern the landlord-tenant relationship. before 2019, the New York State Legislature was basically sort of had they're called the IDC. I don't know if people remember them. They were sort of the fake Democrats, and they basically allied with Republicans to keep a lot of progressive legislation from actually becoming law. And so there were lots and lots of loopholes that were built in to the rent stabilization laws that allowed landlords to find all sorts of fun ways to get apartments out of rent stabilization. And basically, when landlords would take tenants in rent stabilized apartments to court, they would, especially when they had no lawyers, because the law was so favorable and because the people they were suing didn't have lawyers, they were very often able to evict long-term rent stabilized tenants from their apartments. And so, the right to counsel helped stop some of that, right? But another thing that happened is in June 2019, this was after, I don't know if people remember, the 2018 election was, the blue wave, right? And, that's sort of when the New York State Legislature became heavily majority Democratic for the first time in a very long time. And one of the big things that they did is they passed what is called the HSTPA, the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act. And that law did a lot of things to change the relationship between landlords and tenants. It made it much more difficult to destabilize rent stabilized apartments. It made housing court proceedings go a lot slower and give tenants a lot more time to respond and a lot more time to, get accustomed to rent increases and other things like that. So there were a lot of changes that were made to the law itself, and it also generated a lot of different grounds for us who defend tenants to make motions to dismiss and get cases kicked out of housing court when landlords made all sorts of different made all sorts of mistakes in their court papers. So it's I think it's important to look at both the substantive legal changes in the landlord tenant law, but also look at the passage of the right to counsel law itself. They were happening on sort of parallel tracks, but they definitely impact each other a lot, because what good is really good law if you don't have a lawyer to help make those arguments? And so you can't really have a meaningful, the state legislature can pass all the great laws it wants, but if tenants don't have lawyers to represent them and give those laws meaning, judges aren't going to figure that out on their own. Judges are going to listen. If one side has an attorney, the other side doesn't have an attorney, the lawyer's going to listen to the party that has the attorney. It's just the nature of the beast, right? That's just how court works. So yeah. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm very happy to take any questions about anything I've spoken about, anything you want to ask me about, anything related to being a tenant. Don't ask me how to evict. If you're a landlord and you want to evict your tenant, don't ask me how to do that. I'm not going to do that. But I'm happy to take any sorts of other questions.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Fox, please? Anything? Going once, going twice. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any questions for you. Unfortunately, most of the people who come here aren't here tonight so far, so they would have been good to ask you some questions, but thank you so much. We really do appreciate your time and coming out to speak to us. I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. And,
do you have any questions? You can ask me.
yeah. Well, I don't know, how does one get in touch with you to get a lawyer if they needed one?
Sure. So, basically, I guess the most important thing is, for anyone that's sued in housing court is to go to your first court date, and you will be connected with a legal services provider there. It's I like, right now, like, we do have a hotline and all that, but like, the best thing to do is, like, the best way to get advice about your case when you really need it is to go to housing court on your first court date. Even if you don't get a lawyer to represent you for full representation, which is one of the big issues right now, you will get some advice on the spot right there when you need it most, which is when you're in housing court. And that's really the best way. Is like, just I think the most important thing is, people get really scared about going to court, and sometimes they don't go. You need to go to court. It's absolutely essential. And when you get to court, that's when you're able to connect with an attorney. Even if, the vision of Right to Counsel does not, come to pass, and you don't get a lawyer to represent you in your case for full representation, you'll still be able to speak with somebody, to speak with a lawyer about your case and get some guidance about what you need to do.
So what are the requirements to get a free lawyer?
Sure. You basically have to be in an eviction case, and your household income has to be under 200% of federal poverty. That's it. Yeah.
Do your organization, the NYLAG, help with assisting in rent payments?
We do not do we do not do that. There are the way that most people resolve non-payment cases is by going to HRA to get a one-shot deal. That's the way most people resolve. There are charities. There's Coalition for the Homeless. There is Met Council. There are a variety of different charities, but usually they're only filling in a gap, right? So like let's say you need to pay $14,000 and HRA is coughing up 12. You might still in a one-shot deal, you might still need another $2,000, and that's the kind of thing where it would make sense to go to a charity. But the way most people resolve cases is with money directly from HRA. And the reason the city does this is because in New York City, we have a tremendous problem with homelessness, and the city does not want anyone entering the shelter system if they can avoid it. So basically, if you can demonstrate that you have ongoing ability to pay your rent, in other words, like your current income, you had some lapse in income, you lost your job, or you had a medical, whatever it was, but you now have enough, you're now earning enough money to pay your rent, the city will pay back your arrears. We've seen one-shot deals in the last couple months, $30,000, $40,000. That's really pushing it, and that's not normal. But it's something that we see. A lot of cases, the arrears are not nearly that much. These are cases that have been delayed a lot because of COVID and other stuff. So whatever. But one-shot deals is how most people resolve their eviction cases.
So what if someone is already evicted? Could they still get a lawyer?
Great question. You have if you have been evicted, your remedy is to file what is called a post-evict order to show cause. And it's really important that you do that immediately, like as soon as you've been evicted. Usually people, and I should mention, like, if you've been in the case, like if the case has been going on and you knew about it and you were in the case and you were evicted, like filing a post-eviction order to show cause is not going to get you very much. But in a situation where possibly you didn't know about the eviction case, the landlord may have done something to make it so that you didn't get the marshal's notice of eviction, you know, you would be able to file a post eviction order to show cause and seeking to be restored to possession, and you would be able to get an attorney. I mean, that would be that could make you eligible to become a client of a right to counsel provider. Another thing that sometimes happens, which is related to what you just asked, is sometimes people are illegally evicted, right? So you can't, I didn't say this, but like the only way you can get evicted in the city of New York is if you are served, you have to be served with papers before your case starts. This is called predicate notice. It's either a rent demand, if it's a non-payment case, or it's a notice of termination, if it's or any something like that, if it's a holdover. So you have the predicate notice, basically letting you know, hey, a case against you to evict you is coming. That's basically what a predicate notice is. Then after you're served with that, you have to be served with a petition, and then you have an opportunity to answer the petition. You'll have a number of court dates, and then you don't get evicted until the judge enters a judgment of possession, and then a warrant to evict you is issued, and then the marshal serves that warrant, and then you have 14 days after the marshal serves that warrant before the marshal can actually execute on the warrant to basically come to your door and evict you. So it's a very lengthy process, and other jurisdictions it's a lot faster, but we have a pretty protective laws for tenants in the city of New York. Now, sometimes, some landlords don't do that. They illegally lock people out. And so if that happens to somebody, they can do what is called to file an illegal lockout proceeding. Illegal lockout proceedings are also filed by order to show cause, and you'd be able to get an attorney in that case too.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Fox?
I have a question. Hi,
Sure.
Sana. In terms of the salary, the amount of your income, if it's above that, is there any other programs? If it's a
Sure.
little above that. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you're over income, you're entitled under the right to counsel law to what is called brief legal assistance, which is a one-time meeting with an attorney about your case. There is, I believe there's an assigned counsel program for seniors, but the reality is, if you're, and I'll be honest, like, it's not like something magic happens where at 200%, 201% of poverty, you magically become able to afford an attorney. Attorneys are really expensive. I mean, like, I'm not sure that if I was evicted, I'd want to hire an attorney. They're not cheap, right? Hundreds of dollars an hour. So, and I'll be honest, a lot of the people who represent tenants who take money are sometimes not the most reputable people, let's put it that way. So, I'll be honest with you, there are not a lot of good options out there. You can trying to find an attorney to take your case pro bono, but that's very hard. So the reality is that if you're over income, especially with all the capacity issues that the providers have, it's very unlikely that you're going to get an attorney, because obviously if you're facing a non-payment case, there's no way you can afford an attorney, right? So that's one of the unfortunate things about the fact that the income cap is low. There is a proposal to increase the cap to 400% of federal poverty. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but that was a legislative proposal in the city council last year, I think.
Does anyone else have a question? We'll have one more. With your organization, does it also help people find any affordable housing then?
No, we don't. I mean, we help our clients who are in holdover cases who need to move. We help them a little bit, but we're not we don't do affordable housing search. We are defending people in eviction cases. That's the main part of our work. And the other thing we do is we assist a small number of people in bringing cases against their landlord to get repairs, which is called an HP action.
So, let me ask you this. If a person, has a judgment made against them because they didn't make it to court in time, is there a way to get that judgment reversed?
Yes, you have to
Before
file an
they
order to
evict it?
show cause.
What is a show cause? What is the show cause? What does that mean?
It's basically, it's a type of motion where you basically go to the court and you say, hey, judge, this judgment should not have been entered for these reasons. Please make the other side come to court and show why this judgment shouldn't be vacated. And so if the judge signs the order to show cause, then there will be a court date. Both sides will come to court that day, and then there will be oral argument in front of the judge, and the judge will make a decision on the order to show cause and what should happen with that judgment that was entered.
Thank you. I see Ms. Cheney, you had your hand raised. Go ahead, please.
What is your success rate?
Great question. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about the program. Our rates are similar, but so the statistics on this are over 80% of the tenants who have a right to counsel attorney get to stay in their homes, which is very high. It's a very good statistic. So most of the time, most of the cases are non-payment cases. And most of the non-payment cases, once you get the money, the case ends, right? Now, in contrast, the holdover cases can be more challenging because, let's say it's a nuisance holdover or it's an unregulated apartment where the landlord just wants the unit vacant so they can sell the building, right? Those are the kinds of cases where, sometimes we get the case dismissed because of a technicality, a legal technicality that renders the case dismissible, and we make a motion to dismiss in the case, and we often win on those. But sometimes there really is no choice but for the tenant to move. But with having an attorney, they're able to move on their own terms and not, and we're able to get people a lot more time than they would have if they were representing themselves.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any more questions? Going once. Going twice. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, you're going to hear a lot more about right to counsel. There's a lot of one of the reasons the state budget hasn't passed is because there's a lot of people are trying to get just cause eviction passed. There's all sorts of issues around housing that are going to be in the news the next 2 months or so. So this is definitely going to be something that you will hear more about.
Did you want to drop your contact information in the chat just in case anyone wants to ask you questions later?
I'll just put my email address here.
Thank you.
And
We also share that via the listserv because I can't see what's in the chat.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. His email is jfox@nylag.org. And we'll have the email.
D as in George, not D as in dog, right? D as in George?
No. jfox@nylag as in go
Okay.
.org.
Thank you.
okay, bye everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, bye.
You will.
Okay. So next, we would like to see if there is any unfinished business for anyone would like to bring up. Unfinished business, any new business?
Maybe.
Did I hear someone? Any new business? Okay. And well, the thing I would like to discuss is the housing fair that we got coming up in June. Again, I had moved the date from the 18th to the 17th because I didn't realize it was Father's Day. So once it was pointed out to me, instead of having it on Sunday, we're gonna do it on Saturday. And I put in the the giveaway. So that's being ordered. So we have the t-shirts and everything for the volunteers. And for any of you who would like to volunteer for the day, because we're definitely going to need the help. We're trying to make it more big and have people be able to interact with each other after they pick up the notices and things of that nature, because we want to get to know our neighbors and everything. So we're trying to arrange sponsorship to have, so we can have like ice cream for the day for people, and popcorn, free popcorn for everyone to eat while they sit there and enjoy the day instead of just grabbing and go. We're going to have the police come out with the wall rock climbing thing for kids. So if anyone brought their kids with them, the kids will have something to do. And we're going to try and put more activities out there. So we're going to need a lot of hands on deck. So if you can volunteer for the day, that would be great. Even if it's just to come out for a couple of hours, that would be great. And if any of you have any other ideas or things that we should do for the day, please do, because I'm getting a permit so that we can have music. And if you could do grilling out there, if you want to grill, we're going to have both the park and one of the streets as a block party blocked off. So we'll have room to do whatever we can. So if you have ideas of what else we should do, please speak up. Anybody? Okay, so if you do have ideas later, you can always email them to us, because no idea is a bad idea, just so we can do whatever we can to represent and try and do some outreach for the neighborhood to get people to start participating more with the board and with the housing committee as well. So that's it on that. And again, we can't approve the minutes because we don't have quorum. So we got to work on getting people who are actually signed up for the committee to come to the committee. So that's a thing that we need to do. And since no one has any new or old business, someone can make a motion to adjourn. Anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
Joan Alexander Bakardine moves to adjourn the meeting at 8:17 p.m.
Thank you. Would I have a second?
I second it.
Who said that?
Armenia Brown.
Thank you. Motion's accepted. The meeting is adjourned at 8:17. Thank you so much for coming out. I really do appreciate you, and have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. You
Thank
also.
you. Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.